The second collectivist argument for why health inequalities exist is looking at the type of housing that people have. Now, we know that in this country, the quality of housing which many low-income people living in poverty, are living in is really poor and really unpleasant, and is actually not just not very nice to live in, but is actually also causing lots of damage to their health, and it can lead to long-term health conditions like asthma. It can lead to damage to the lungs. It can lead to, if there's not enough heating coming through, it can mean that people are getting colds. They're not recovering from illness very well, and it's also more expensive to heat poor quality housing, which can lead to a lot of health problems, particularly for elderly people, because they can't afford to heat these poorer quality houses, and then you have to choose between heating or eating in the most extreme cases. An example of this that bad housing has had can be seen in figures published actually by the UK government, which found that over 2 million households in the UK are suffering from fuel poverty, that residents couldn't afford to keep their homes at an appropriate heat during the winter. This leads to problems with joints for elderly people. It leads to people getting colds, illness, pneumonia in extreme cases, and death. Every winter period, a significant number of old people die because it's so cold. So poorer quality housing has a huge impact on people's health. And you're going to watch a video later on with a huge number of examples of this, just really powerful stories of how the horrific conditions that people are living in is affecting their health. Why are they living in those areas? Well, because they can't afford to live anywhere else. Often this is social housing provided by the government, sometimes called council housing, and it's often in a really, really dreadful state. Big high rises that are full of damp, that are collapsing, that are just not safe for people to live in. So this argument that health is affected by housing, and health inequalities are caused by housing, in terms of people who live in good quality housing have good health, people who live in bad quality housing have bad health, is supported by a lot of collectivists. And they point to studies that show that poor housing increases the risk of severe ill health and disability during childhood and early adulthood. It increases the chance of mental health problems and increases the risk of meningitis, asthma, and coronary heart disease. Also, it's a knock-on effect, because if you've got people living in poor quality houses, kids particularly, they're more likely to get ill, which means they're going to miss school, which means they're going to do worse in school, which means they're going to have poorer life outcomes in general. So this is a massive, massive problem that you might not necessarily think about to begin with. Of course, this argument is opposed by individualists who would argue that simply improving the quality of housing is not going to solve health problems, right? They would say, listen, we're not going to magically just move people in a different house and suddenly they'll get less healthy. And they would argue that this is a correlation, not a causation. So we know that the majority of people living in these poor quality housing are in lower social classes. They're people more likely to be living in poverty. And we know that there are lots of factors that affect people living in poverty that mean that they're more likely to have poorer health outcomes. So they would argue it's not the housing that's causing their health to be worse, it's all the other stuff: higher rates of smoking, drinking, poor diet, etc. While a 2013 study found that health and housing were closely linked, individuals would say it couldn't prove that improving housing quality would directly improve the health of residents. So they would argue that actually it's lots of other stuff. It's not the housing that's causing people to be unhealthy. So your point explain example is PEEE is going to be based on that. We've just really got two tasks today, two really simple tasks. The first one is to watch this documentary. It's an hour long, so it'll take you a while. You probably want to watch it in chunks. It follows these three families and three kids in particular. It's called Poor Kids. Some of you might have seen it before. I think it's an incredible documentary. I've shown it to classes before, but it's well worth a watch. And this documentary follows three kids and looks at kind of who are living in poverty and looks at kind of how their lives are over about a year. And what's really special about it is that the kids are just really honest about their lives. They talk about it. You see where they live, their homes, and you can see the impact that's having on their health. So I'd like you to take notes under the headings that I've given you there: how the kids' housing impacts their health, how the kids' diet impacts their health, and how other factors impact on the kids' health. And then there's key quotations that we've got in all our videos and key statistics. Sort of at the end of each section, there's a kind of, this sounds really weird, but they make it look like graffiti, but there's key statistics at the end of each section that are really good to get down as well. So then, once you've done that, again, I've just noticed that I've got the wrong task number. Again, that'll be fixed by the time you see this. Once you've watched that video, you've taken the notes and everything, PEE paragraph on the top of your housing, using the question, poverty is the main cause of poor health, discuss. So you might want to talk about, to help you frame a paragraph, you might want to start that with one cause of poor health that is really linked to poverty is housing. As we know, people living in poverty much more likely to live in poor quality housing, and then go into your explain, etc. So that's... I hope that's okay. If you need any help with that, please do let me know. Remember, guys, I don't expect you to do this all in one go. So that video alone is going to take you an hour to watch. Watch it in sections. It works really well that way. Do your work in sections. Come back, go away, come back to it. Whatever works best for you.